Last time on JoeMac Reads, we talked about the biggest surprise of 2026, the evil algorithm. My favorite sci-fi read to date, potentially my favorite read of the whole year. This time on JoeMac Reads, we return to the world of fantasy and Memory, Sorrow, Thorn to find out, did Tad Williams successfully close this story out, and did it make its way into one of my favorite fantasy series? Find out this time on JoeMac Reads. Oh, hey, I'm JoeMac, and welcome back to the channel. I'm so excited to be back and talking to everybody about To Green Angel Tower. We finally finished the Memory, Sorrow, Thorn trilogy by Tad Williams, and I am happy to say he did it. He closed the story out. He landed that plane. He did everything I wanted him to do, and a little more. And Memory, Sorrow, Thorn is one of, if not the favorite fantasy series that I've read. There are a couple of close ones, but I'm not entirely sure if this is recency bias or if the others are nostalgia, being Drizzt, Aragon, even Lightbringer. I liked Lightbringer. I didn't have a problem with the way that that ended. So it's something I'm going to have to think about. Maybe I'll do a fantasy ranking video at one point in the future, learn how to use Tier Maker like everyone else. Memory, Sorrow, Thorn, To Green Angel Tower. Check out just how thick this guy is. Check out just how thick this guy is. Dummy thick. Look at him, okay? So thick that in modern times, they took this book and they split it into two. You got To Green Angel Tower Part 1, To Green Angel Tower Part 2. I hate that. I hate it when they do it in movies. I hate it when they do it in video games. You got to put a different disc in, which I guess you don't have to do that anymore, but I hated when you had to. And I hate that they've done it to this book because the pacing, obviously there's like a part 2 in here. And I hope, I don't know, but I hope that that is where they split the Part 1, Part 2 for the books so that you at least have a good point and you don't have to rewrite or try and end the book at a certain point to try and continue on to the next one. This single volume allowed me to read from start to finish without having to break immersion and pick anything else up. And I was very happy that it allowed me to do that. I felt like the pacing in this book was done great. I think the pacing in this book was better than the last book, just because there were some point of view chapters in the last book that, you know, had me starting to dislike Miriam L, basically. I liked the way that Tad Williams was able to show that wherever his characters ended up, they earned it. And not everybody makes it out, which I like because it's more realistic. Not everybody can always live and get what they want. I think the character growth of Simon as a protagonist was absolutely wonderful. Not only was it wonderful for us to witness and to go through with, but for him to realize that he's grown for the people, the characters around him to see and reference and think about the progress that Simon has made through his time in this story. Both he's gotten older and he's matured because of all the things that he's been through. To see the way that Tad was able to utilize these systems and dimensions, maybe whatever you would call the dream road, but to have those play such a large role, to have characters that specialize in these things and to use that to close out their storylines like Lilith or the witch or the way that Simon receives information about like kind of almost like foresight to see things that are going on, to recognize To Green Angel Tower, to see the white tree and to think that it was the frozen tree, but it wasn't. I don't know. No spoilers. But and another great thing is how Tad was able to make it so the whole world came together to combat this evil. And not just like literally all the races of the world had to come together, had to travel across the world to meet each other. And it was done in a way that was so organic and so natural and real, because there were, for cultural reasons, different races had to come to decisions or had to travel certain distances, had to go against past edicts or decisions that were made by ancestors in order to start to participate. And when traveling from, A to B, from where they started to where the big fight is, they travel through different towns, cities, and, when in Rome, beat up the bad guys on the way. Seeing all of that come together, seeing Tad able to have distance and travel play a real role and to raise the stakes that way with the entire conflict was awesome. I can really see where George R.R. Martin got his inspiration and his influences from Tad Williams' Memory, Sorrow, Thorn to Game of Thrones. I think this trilogy, at minimum, not counting any of the other pieces and parts that are included, which I haven't read yet, should be required reading for any true fantasy enjoyer. And this is an epic fantasy, not just because this book is so thick, but because the story is epic in scope. And not to potentially cross a line or at risk of insulting anybody, but it feels like modern readers, the discourse that I see online, one of the biggest complaints that I see about books in general is when things come to a slower pace. And because of this being an older story and a classic epic fantasy, Tad takes the time to really paint the picture. So the pacing is slower, and I just want, for anybody who for some reason is watching book 3, the book 3 video this deep into it, just understand, it's not breakneck. This is something everyone should read to see where George got his ideas the way that I was able to. The fact that Memory, Sorrow, Thorn is something that I'm back into reading for 9 years as an adult. And for me to just find out about it, I took a little hiatus, but that's neither here nor there, is appalling. This should be something everybody knows about. This should be common knowledge. Tad Williams as a writer should be something that is on everybody's mouth. He's still writing. The fact that he's not common and he's still coming out with books, and maybe it's a failure on my part. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's me. and that could be that might be the common denominator in my life. With that being said, I do have a single criticism. And it's not about the story as it is, but it's about the postscript, the epilogue, the post-credits scene. I think the book was better without it. I think the way that the book ends on the last word of the last page of the true story of the last chapter was perfect for me, for JoeMac. I felt like the epilogue was a little too lighthearted, a little too positive, a little too perfect for the way that the tone in the world plays out. And I'm so excited to one day come back to fantasy after this, to read The Last King of Austin Ard. It will be the first fantasy that I come back to read when I'm done getting sucked into this sci-fi black hole that I feel taking me. I don't know what it is, but I need sci-fi right now. The only exception is the end of August. We have A.J. Drummond's Omens and Ash coming out, so I will be reading that when I get it. But it's going to be sci-fi for a little bit. And there's nothing I can do about it. It's a need. It's not a want. I have to do it. With that being said, everybody, if you're here, I assume you've read at least the first 2 books. Maybe you're in the third or you've finished everything. So please, I implore you, tell me what you think of this trilogy. Do you agree that it was better without the epilogue? Or am I insane? Do you agree that Tad Williams should be more commonly known? Or am I living under a rock and that's the problem? Everybody does know about Tad Williams and I'm finding out this late because I'm an idiot. Let me know where Memory Sorrow Thorn lands in your favorite fantasy series, you know what you got to do. Get in those comments. Love you. Bye. Next time on JoeMac Reads, once again, we're leaving the worlds of fantasy behind, and what a wonderful way to do it with Memory Sorrow Thorn. Back to outer space, back to sci-fi. We are going to explore the world of Terra Ignata by Adel Palmer with Book 1, Too Like the Lightning. Does lightning strike twice? Will I love another frame narrative sci-fi book? Find out next time on JoeMac Reads.